From Montana's news leader, this is the MTN Noon News.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for joining us for your noon news this Friday. I'm Jeanelle Slade. Well, there's a major development today in the race to get a COVID-19 vaccine approved, and President Trump takes the unprecedented step of inviting Michigan lawmakers to the White House as he continues to challenge the election results. Natalie Brand reports.
Drug maker Pfizer is requesting emergency use authorization for its COVID-19 vaccine today.
If the data is as solid as it appears, we literally could be weeks away from the authorization of a 95% effective vaccine.
At its first public briefing in months Thursday, the White House Coronavirus Task Force said despite progress on a vaccine, it's critical Americans wear masks and social distance, with cases and hospitalizations skyrocketing.
If you're fighting a battle and the cavalry's on the way, you don't stop shooting.
As President-elect Joe Biden prepares to inherit the pandemic, he calls President Trump's refusal to allow the transition process to start irresponsible.
If we don't have access to all this data, it's going to put us behind the 8 ball by a matter of a month or more, and that's lives.
President Trump invited top Republicans from Michigan State's legislature to the White House Friday. It appears to be part of an effort to overturn results in a state he lost by more than 150,000 votes.
The unprecedented invitation comes a day after President Trump's personal attorney Rudy Giuliani held a news conference filled with baseless claims but no evidence of widespread voter fraud.
I know crimes. I can smell them. You don't have to smell this one. I can prove it to you 18 different ways.
This morning, Georgia's Secretary of State, a supporter of President Trump, made clear Mr. Biden won his state.
I'm disappointed our candidate didn't win. I believe that the numbers that we have presented today are correct.
President-elect Biden, who turns 78 today, is scheduled to meet with top congressional Democrats this afternoon. Natalie Brand, CBS News, the White House.
Tennessee Senator Lamar Alexander is the latest Republican lawmaker to call on the Trump administration to provide the Biden team with transition materials and resources. Well, as Montana nears 19,000 active COVID-19 cases today, the state death toll at this hour stands at 589. We know one of those victims was a 62-year-old inmate at the Montana State Prison in Deer Lodge. A press release states this week's death marks the third DOC inmate who has succumbed to the virus. 401 inmates have been infected and 112 cases remain active. Governor Steve Bullock's new COVID-19 restrictions go into effect today. First, the governor had expanded the mask mandate to include all counties statewide, regardless of the number of active cases. He also ordered bars, restaurants, breweries, distilleries, and casinos to be limited to 50% capacity, and they must close by 10 p.m. Eating and drinking establishments must also limit group sizes to 6 or less, with a mandatory 6-foot physical distance between groups. Bullock also ordered all public gatherings limited to 25 or fewer people and asked private gatherings to be limited to 15 or fewer people. Soldiers and airmen in the Montana National Guard are often part-time. Well, they are police officers, teachers, and business owners. These men and women have been called upon a lot in 2020, and for some, the stress is piling up. MTN's Phoenix O'Connor shows us how the Guard is stepping up to help.
If you have traveled by air this year, most likely you've had your temperature taken by the Montana National Guard. But that wasn't the only additional task our Montana soldiers undertook.
This last year has been very busy for the Montana National Guard, not only supporting overseas deployments, but also, supporting the state and the communities across Montana with the COVID response.
As well as assisting the Montana State Prison after correctional officers were short-staffed due to a COVID outbreak in the prison.
So that higher operational tempo, it definitely can take some additional stress on our soldiers and our families.
To keep soldiers engaged, the Army has created an app that soldiers can download on their phones so they can have access to resources. From financial help to hotlines to call if soldiers are in need to talk if they are having thoughts about killing themselves. But it's not just soldiers that are under pressure. Military children and spouses are feeling it too. And there are options for them to get help as well. The Montana National Guard Family.org is a good start to find resources. There are also resources for friends and family who think a soldier may be struggling with thoughts of suicide.
Hotline numbers where they can call and say, hey, I'm feeling like this person might hurt themselves, where they can do that 1-800 phone call or, do a non-emergency contact with the police department or something, just to do a health and welfare check if they think that's something that's going on.
You can also call the National Guard's Family Service or ask to speak with the chaplain to make an anonymous report. In Helena, Phoenix O'Connor, MTN News.
It's now time to check in on the weather scene, which has been pretty darn wacky, Ed, if we can use that word.
We can.
What's ahead?
We're still on the same track as far as the seasonal outlook, Jeanelle. Let's take a look and see. We're looking at December, January, February, so we're not really into that period yet. Still trending a little bit colder than average across northern Montana, while much of the southern portion of the country will actually trend warmer. It's a typical La Nina weather pattern. And as far as the moisture goes, drier than average as we start looking to the south. So if you're a snowbirder, it actually looks pretty good through the southern portion of the country, but we could be leaning wetter than average once we start getting into the real winter months. Now that means an overall average, not the entire period, will be wetter and cooler, but we'll take a look at the short-term forecast coming up in a few minutes.
All right, thanks so much, Ed. Well, the 2 victims killed in a Kalispell house fire early Wednesday morning were both children. Flathead County Sheriff Brian Hino announced today 2-year-old Deanna Bass and 3-year-old Riker Bass lost their lives. Firefighters responded to reports of a fire in the 700 block of East California shortly before 1 a.m. on Wednesday. When firefighters arrived, they found 3 people inside. All 3 were transported to the hospital where the 2 children died. Kalispell police are still investigating the cause of the fire. Now, both children's bodies were transported to the Montana State Crime Lab for further investigation. Well, the Bureau of Business and Economic Research will virtually present the annual Economic Outlook in early 2021. It's replacing its annual statewide tour. The report is always a high point for economists, business, and government leaders. It kicks off the next year with extensive data into market sectors like housing, natural resources, agriculture, and tourism. But last year, the report was just weeks old when the pandemic hit. So the 2020 report is aptly called The Path Forward, How COVID-19 Has Reshaped the Economy. Director Pat Barkey says the pandemic has changed Montana's economy at a stunning rate. And while it's unfortunate the presentations across the state are canceled, organizers are already networking and starting registrations.
And we're trying to make it as easy as possible for people to recognize who else is in the crowd, to be able to step out of the presentation and have a conversation with people, step back in, and perhaps catch up on video with what you might have missed.
Now, because it's virtual, the conference will have 2 keynote speakers from the Federal Reserve Bank and Harvard University. The conference will last 2 days in February. Well, as we approach the colder winter months, one nonprofit is encouraging residents who are financially struggling to reach out. Energy Share Montana is a nonprofit that works with local agencies to ensure utilities are paid and families stay warm. Since the pandemic, they've seen a huge increase in the number of people needing help and are happy to provide assistance. The organization has offices across the state and is asking residents to keep a close eye on their neighbors and the elderly who could be in need. There are many ways to help. Residents can fill out applications or they can offer to call the statewide number. That's 1-888-779-7589 or online EnergyShareMT.com. All applications are confidential. Well, if you haven't received a stimulus check, now is your last chance to see if you are eligible. You have until tomorrow at 1 p.m. to register with the IRS. The agency sent out letters to about 9 million Americans who may be able to claim the money. That includes people who don't typically file tax returns due to low income and also college students. You'll be looking for the Economic Impact Payment registration on the IRS website. Well, the Census Bureau has come across some irregularities that it says could delay its count of the country's population. It's something the census director says has also happened in the past. Now, this means that come January, a Trump administration decision to leave out undocumented immigrants from the tally could be overridden. Soon, the Supreme Court will hear arguments over whether that decision was legal. Up next on your new news, the Red Kettle campaign will be ringing again, and your help is needed more than ever. But first, meteorologist Ed McIntosh is in next with your statewide weather forecast. Don't go away.